All right, so the clever title I came up with for this was Get Your Command Line in Control. So command line is one of those things where when I was initially applying for like jobs and stuff, it wasn't something I saw very often as I graduated, right? But it turns out it's one of the things that's looked after kind of under the table, right? So it's not always immediately obvious, but it's something you're assumed you already know. As computer scientists, as IS and IT individuals, you run into it quite a lot, and there are a lot of use cases for it. But command line can be intimidating. Is anyone here who thinks command line is kind of intimidating? It's like a black box where you have to type stuff. There's no mouse or anything. Oh man. So one of the things that I've always found very interesting is how this kind of stuff is portrayed in the media, right? So if you've seen any like CSI episodes or stuff like that, they always portray it a little bit differently than it actually is. I'll show you guys this website. And this is actually what you'll always see. You can just go in and go, oh, I gotta get into the mainframe, guys. I gotta hack this up, code. Look at that as a password cracker. It's a Bitcoin miner. And you always see this like random stuff, and people are just, identifying fingerprints, for example, was one I saw in CSI. It was like, sort of their computer was even turned off, but they still figured it out. But yeah, so I mean, it's always portrayed a little bit more than it actually might be set out to be. Of course, you can do all the complicated stuff that they do show. It is possible to set that up. But it doesn't always have to be that intimidating. So we're going to show you guys what that looks like today. We're going to go over some of the basic stuff. It might already be familiar to you. If it is already familiar to you, we have some more interesting exercises to kind of challenge your understanding. But we're going to talk about learning command line basics. We're going to be learning about shell scripts, which is essentially running commands in sequence to do something. And then we're going to use Git to put it up on GitHub for the whole world to see. Isn't that exciting? A lot of employers look at that stuff. So I know there are some people who raise their hands when we talked about you've kind of done basic command line, or even if you haven't. Can anyone give me any ideas as to why you might want to care about this? Why did you come to this workshop today? What did you find interesting? Yes?
Like we use it for like pinging.
You use it for pinging stuff. Yeah, that's very good. To figure out if something's up. Right. Anything else you guys can think of? Go ahead.
You can get your computer information if you need to in a pretty detailed way.
Ah, that's a very good one. I did not think of that one. It's a good one. And so this is kind of going back to what I mentioned about jobs. But as it turns out, as I was going out on Indeed just last week, I found a whole bunch of positions where they kind of quietly put command line in the description. So here's one for a software developer where they say, oh, you need to know Linux and work in a command line environment. And that's not just for software engineers. There's another one for software engineer. There's now for network support technician. If you're doing any kind of network support using Linux, for example, you're going to run into this stuff. So this stuff can be very useful in your career. So we'll get into that a little bit later, but for now, let's talk a little bit about Git. Alex, you want to get into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So distributed version control system. This is a system that allows you to push your code, have it stored somewhere. You can revert your code, you can take snapshots of your code, you can push your code, you can have other people see your code. This is a distributed version control system is a place where you can make sure that everything is off of your machine and on someone else's. So, for instance, whenever I'm done with my work week, before I leave, I want to make sure that I push my code to a repository, so that way, if over the weekend something happens, my laptop catches on fire, then it's not just there, but it's in a distributed version control system. An example of this is GitHub. It's a repository hosting service. It's not related to Git itself, and it was recently acquired by Microsoft. There are a couple alternatives to this, one of them being GitLab that a lot of companies are looking at, but they're all doing the same thing. They all are giant repositories where you can go and find open source code, you can push your code to that repository, share your code, this relates to you guys, share your code with employers, which is a big deal, and it's a place to kind of display what you're doing and your skill set. So let's go into get some Git concepts. We just talked about repository. Same thing as what we were just mentioning. It's a place to put all of your code. You pull, push to that repository. It can be remote. or it can also be local. So a repository can be on just your machine, and that way, if you're kind of doing some kind of project where you don't necessarily want someone else's system, you can host it on your own machine and consistently push and pull to that.
Yeah, part of our workshop, you'll be doing actually both of those, so you'll be able to see what the differences is.
Yeah.
All right.
Cloning. So cloning is copying a repo to your machine. That is pretty self-explanatory, but you're essentially making a call to any type of repository. If you're making a call to GitHub, you take a URL or some type of link and you say git clone to that, and then it pulls down all of the files from that repository onto your local machine. There's pulling. So once you have that local repository on your machine, and you've got that project that you've now cloned from, the example here is GitHub, then you can pull from that repository so you can consistently get the most up-to-date version of that code. So when we say pull, we mean that we're taking in everything that is the most current version out there. Anytime anyone makes a commit, anytime someone adds code to that repository, you can get it by doing a git pull command. Then there's pushing. So it's the reverse of pulling. You're pushing your code to a repository, so that way your code can get off your machine. If it catches on fire, you don't kill it. Add your changes back up to the remote repo for those 2 weeks. Then there's commit. So commit is a way for you to specifically write out what your code that you have just changed is doing. So you have a commit message that goes along with the code that you're committing to a branch or to a repository. And once you've committed that code, you can then push several commits. So we make a commit, add a message for that commit saying what the changes are. And once we're ready to push the repository, we do a push. And maybe if somebody makes changes before you can push, you do a pull. So that's kind of how all of these work together.
How many people have used some of these commands before? Have you already seen it? Are you comfortable with most of these? No. Okay.
Does anyone have any questions about these right here? Yeah.
So what if like your code is different than theirs? Does it always overwrite when you do a pull or a push?
No. So that's where merging comes into play, and it's a nightmare sometimes. But it's something that you have to do. It's sometimes can be really easy if the change has no relation to your code. But if your code is really mixed into someone else's code that had just made a change before you're trying to make a change, then it can be really difficult. But there are like commands that you can have that will allow you to see the different changes in your code and the code that's out there, and you can kind of splice together what you need in order to push a good copy of that code to the repository. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right.
We'll test how you guys understand this stuff in the work. But let's talk about more command line stuff. So, what is the command line, right? So we've got to kind of have an idea of it. Essentially, just using your keyboard to navigate your computer, to do whatever you want it to do, without necessarily using a mouse. And a lot of people don't like it just because it feels like an old way of doing things. Does anyone agree with that? Old way, right? Back when we didn't have pictures and mouse and animations. But while that is true to some extent, there are times when command line is actually very useful, still today. It's a way of giving the computer exact instructions on what you want to do. And we'll kind of see more examples of that. But historically, this was the only way to do things before the 80s, when kind of GUIs or graphical user interfaces where your mouse and click and point and drag kind of came into play. For those of us in Windows, there's a little bit of a history that we should probably touch on, which is the history of command line versus PowerShell. So Windows has traditionally supported what's called command line, which is very basic. It's actually not even comparable to what you have in Mac or Linux. So since Windows 7, Microsoft released something called PowerShell, which is a little bit more powerful. So today we're going to be talking just about PowerShell because that is the modern standard. But if you go into any enterprise environments, don't be surprised if you see command line or command line scripts, because it takes a while for companies to kind of migrate and all that kind of stuff. But we will talk about PowerShell today, and actually most of the commands we talk about today will work on both things, but just be aware of the distinction. In Windows 10, who has Windows 10 here? Everyone has Windows 10? Windows 10 has PowerShell support by default, so like your default terminal is PowerShell. So, but we'll kind of get into that, and you guys will kind of get your hands wet with it. So, let's go to the next tab here. Slide. Why use it? So, this is kind of highlighting a lot of things I've kind of already touched on. Sometimes you can't avoid it, right? Sometimes there are times when you need to go into the terminal for debugging, troubleshooting. Personally, in my experience working at T Rowe Price, I've had issues with a bunch of these applications. Git is a very big one. When you need to go to some stuff, some people use GUI applications for a lot of the Git stuff, but there are times when things get really complicated and not super cookie cutter, and when you need to go into the terminal and kind of hash out how to fix things. NPM. How many of us have done NPM here? I heard there were workshops here where you had to do it in terminal. Next one is probably going to be AWS CLI. Those of us who want to do AWS. Oftentimes in enterprise environments, you can't directly modify it to their website just because of security reasons, so you'll have to do it from the command line. And that's a very big use case. I deal with that a lot at my work currently. .NET Core, if anyone's heard of that. Anyone here heard of Jenkins as well? Jenkins is a build server that a lot of companies use sometimes. Kind of need to go into there as well. So there are times when it's actually very useful for troubleshooting, debugging, and figuring things out, like super quick. This terminal is super fast, depending on what you're doing. Next one. Yeah, allows you to do things a little more efficiently. A lot of times, a big use case for it is doing a lot of bulk operations. One example would be if you had so here at the library, you have, has anyone been to SCS at the library before? There's like a first floor where they have a big lab. Have you been there?
I work in OTS.
Are you working at this? Ah, nice. So if you had to install a new version of Windows on that machine, on all those machines at once, installing Windows is pretty manual. You put in your disk, you click next, you do all that stuff. And that kind of sucks. It's not the most fun way to do it. So Microsoft allows you to create a batch script that you put into your installer, and it automatically selects the commands for you. So now that repetitive task of installing something on 100 machines becomes just pushing it out, running it, and you're good to go. So you can see in cases like that, when you need to do some kind of bulk operation, it's very useful. Does anyone have any questions on that? Yes?
Could you use like a domain controller for multiple systems?
You could use a domain controller and you would deploy your images that way, but once the installer comes up, you still need to manually do like your next stuff, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that's when you can actually automate that with a script too.
Oh, wow. Okay.
If you're interested in that specific thing, we can look it up. But I had to do it once and it saved my life. All right, next one. And there's sometimes when it's a really good for a certain problem, and it's easier than using a GUI, and that's kind of case dependent. I've had a few instances with this at work, but there'll be times when you'll find that this actually fits in perfectly than some other automated solution. Next one. Like this one. This is a very random example I found, but I thought it was very appropriate. So if you went on a trip, you have like 1,000 pictures of, Baltimore, and you want to put it on your file name so you can find it easier. It's a little bit hard to do. But with Terminal, you can actually do it within a few lines of code. So there are very niche use cases for it that you'll find it's useful. So the more you understand it, the more you'll be able to figure out how and when to apply it. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, we'll go to the next one. And there's something called piping, which is really, really cool. So one of the coolest things about terminal tool, especially stuff that has come out of Unix, is that there's a philosophy for each of these like command line utilities you find. And it's that do one thing and do it really, really well. So when you have little components that do one thing really well, you can pipe between each other, which is essentially a way for them to communicate. And you can create really complex scripts that do some really interesting stuff. And its capabilities become really important for the solutions you're making. I think we do some of that in our workshop. I don't know if you remember any piping stuff.
I think so.
But if not, we'll kind of give you more example. I think I have an example here, but that's one of the really cool features of it is being able to pipe your output, meaning run some kind of command, pass the output to another command, and kind of keep going on to be able to do more interesting stuff.
Like an assembly line?
Like an assembly line. That's a very good one. So like one would be if you wanted to ping a network and you wanted to see what the response time was, you can ping it and then try to filter out the string. So you now have a script that tells you what the millisecond response time is for just one thing.
Oh, wow.
Right? That's pretty cool. You want to add to that?
Yeah. So not necessarily about that.
Okay.
But is anyone in this room interested in doing front-end development? or app?
React, Angular, JavaScript,
Anything like
HTML5.
that? Okay, because if you are, then there are a ton of different commands and ton of different CLIs that you can use to speed up your development. For React, there's a React CLI. For Angular, there's an Angular CLI. And the CLI stands for Command Line Interface. It's an interface into working with the front-end framework that you're using. So for Angular, if you want to add like a new component or add a new part to your project, you would just do ng like create or ng command XYZ, and it would build something for you. That way you're not constantly building something like from scratch. It's actually generating code for you. So there's that instance. If you're trying to reuse open source code, NPM, like it's talked about up there, is used constantly. I'm using this every day. So a lot of these commands are useful, not just for like back-end purposes and making sure that, in this example, renaming files, but there are a lot of other good use cases. But there's a lot of other use cases on the front end that really make it worth it to know about.
Good. Any questions? Good so far? All right. So we'll talk a little bit about command structure. This is just talking about what a command looks like, kind of demystifying what it looks like. So essentially, it's just three major components. You have the actual command, the utility. You have some flags. You kind of like tweaking the knobs, if you will. And then any kind of arguments. So this will be the same kind of arguments you're taking in your programs, right? Your static void main arguments. Yeah, all that kind of stuff. So this is how you're actually passing in those arguments if you want to use some of that stuff. So pretty straightforward, but a lot of times commands will have 100 different flags. You can take 100 different arguments. So usually you want to refer to the help documentation for the specific thing you're doing. And there's pretty standard ones on like Mac or Windows you can actually use for finding help. But just keep this in mind, and they'll help you be less intimidated. Right. And one of the cool things about command line stuff is it kind of does a lot of stuff for you. So for those of you who've used Eclipse or like any kind of Python IDEs, you've seen IntelliSense, right? Autocompletion. There's kind of stuff like that in Terminal where you just use the tab key to complete stuff. You'll see some of that in the workshop as you type out some of these commands, but it'll make your life a little bit easier. So it's not all like super old and typing stuff out there. It has some pretty good features. Let's go to the next one. Alright, and so here's some of the prerequisite stuff. I think we kind of covered it a little bit earlier. Want to make sure you have a GitHub account and have the Git tool, and then we'll kind of go on with it. So the next half of this presentation is probably going to be actually here.
Well, yeah. But yeah, how to open the terminal is pretty much.
Yeah, so this is the part where I want you guys to just kind of work along with us. We'll learn some basic commands. So we'll want to open the terminal first. For those of us in Windows, we will use PowerShell. For those in the Macintosh land, we will just use the terminal. So Windows has a cool thing where you have something called a PowerShell ISE, which is an integrated scripted environment. It's kind of like a development environment for your scripts. So you can use that for your workshop. But for now, we can just open the regular terminal. Everyone has that up, right? Just go ahead and open it up. Good? All right. You want to start the first one, Alex?
Yeah, sure. So the first one is for Windows, it's CLS, Mac, it's clear, Linux, it's clear, and it clears your screen there. So when it clears your terminal, rather. So if you have a bunch of commands in your terminal, it gets hard to look at after a while. You just do CLS clear or clear.
Did that not work for anyone? Everyone's good? Give me a thumbs up. Yeah. Clearing your screen. Next one is present working directory. So sometimes you want to find out where you are in your terminal if you're doing a lot of stuff. You want to make sure you've modified the right files. And a quick way to do that is using something called PWD. It'll tell you exactly the path that you're in. This will be the same as if you opened up your Finder or your Windows Explorer. It tells you at the top where directory you're in. So you're going to need some of this stuff. So there's a task with this. So go ahead and make sure you're probably in your home directory, right? In Mac, what's the default when you type in PWD? Users. And your username?
Yeah.
What about on Windows? Can anyone tell me? Same thing, just a user profile? All right, cool. So let's go to the next one. So some of these commands are going to fall right into the workshop, so definitely try to follow along, guys. Now we're going to make a folder in okay.
We're going to make a folder.
Make a folder.
Using make directory. So it's mkdir for Windows, Mac, and Linux, and it will create a directory for you. Whatever you name it.
Another name for a folder.
Yes. You run that command. Does everyone get it?
All right.
Pretty easy one. You list all your files. You use ls.
So if you do that, you should see the folder you just created, workshop, right? Does anyone not see that?
ls enter.
Is everyone with us so far? Anyone confused? Anyone lost? Feel free to speak up. A little lost?
What's the point for the L flag?
Ah, that's a good question. So type in ls without the L flag. What does that give you?
Just a list of
It's just a bunch of files. But L is an argument you pass in to make it, to give you some more details about the file. So you see permission stuff, you see all the files, and it kind of lists it out in a list instead of like columns. Now, type in another flag, ls, and then space dash LA. That's also going to show you all the files you have, plus any hidden files you might have. So by doing this kind of stuff, yes, that's a really important one, especially if you're in Mac or Linux, because you'll often have like hidden files that you won't be able to see directly. So if you're on a Mac or Linux, you can type in the command man and any other command, it'll give you the manual for that. I think on Windows, you'll be able to do like dash dash help, and that'll show you all the flags and stuff. So that's how you find out what arguments are available. And those are just the knobs on ls. So ls is just list files, and you can just do a little more stuff.
Am I on the right one?
Sorry, is it?
Is this the right one?
Okay. Jeez. Supply values.
Ah, see, so when you did mkdir, you did not pass in the name of the folder.
Yes. Here
Can
you
we
go.
go back to that one?
Sure.
Okay, so just right folder behind MK.
So
So do Control C.
mkdir is a command that takes in one argument.
Control
You
C.
have to pass in the name of the folder you want to make.
Is it Control C on Windows?
Control C or Control Z?
Control Z.
If you're ever stuck in a command,
Z.
and like not exits, you want to do Control C or Control Z, it'll just exit out. Like no questions asked.
He's on PowerShell.
It does not work.
Control Z. Yeah.
Yeah.
Every time
Control
I
Z.
type in,
Control
I
C.
try and type in
Control
English,
C.
it says missing.
Control C.
There you go. Okay, so Control C works.
Right.
So here we're gonna do is we're gonna do mkdir
Space dash.
space
Space.
and then any name that you want,
Okay.
and then click enter.
Just enter.
Okay.
Space.
So now it's created that
L.
folder, that
Right.
directory. So now if you do click in ls,
Oh, you know what it is
Enter.
in PowerShell? It looks like it's already doing the formatting for you. So if you didn't have this, if you had like a,
so now you see all the files that are in
on a Linux machine, I think it would just give you a block
which is
yellow.
what you just created.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll come back to that one. Let's keep going for now.
Everyone's good with make directory and ls?
Question?
No, my ls works fine, but it does not work when I attach the L.
Okay, I think that's a PowerShell thing. Okay, we'll have to look into that. Let's move on for now. For now, you should be able to just see, I think, because it looks like, huh?
Are we supposed to be on PowerShell or?
PowerShell. Yes, please stay on PowerShell.
We'll
I'll
come
figure
back
out the
to
L
it.
stuff. I think that's a thing with PowerShell. I might have messed up the commands. We'll look into that afterwards. But if you just do ls, you should be able to see a list of files, right? All organized in like a grid. That's what dash L gives you, but I think PowerShell has it integrated by default. So that's fine. You should be able to do just ls. And when you do that in the folder you are in, you should be able to see the workshop folder, right? Does everyone see that? All right, so now we're gonna do some navigation. So navigating anywhere in the terminal, you want to use the cd command, which is a change directory. Now this can go into any folder you're currently in, or you can also pass in a full path, like an absolute path, to go into any specific folder. So for now, let's just go inside that folder. All right, so next one. And to verify you're there, go ahead and type in that command we saw earlier with the pwd to find your present working directory. You should be in users profile workshop, right? Is everyone with me so far? Mm-hmm. This is important for the workshop, so I want to make sure you guys are on the same page. All right? Excellent.
I don't know what to do.
You know what to do? Yes, ask now, ask
And
now.
I'm not ashamed to say it. So, I just click on this.
See, we're just. I think you weren't scrolled up enough. So now you're there. So if you
Okay.
do CD into what did you name that last folder?
DJJ.
Yeah, CD space DJJ.
Okay.
Enter.
And since
Now you're in.
I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm gonna need a lot of help.
That's just fine. That's why we're here. And then-
Actually, let's do this then. Everyone open up your Windows Explorer or your Finder. Let's see if you can find your folder in the GUI. If you made a folder, you should be able to find it, right? So open up your Explorer, go into your users, see if there's the folder you made.
Users, DJJ, should I just take that?
Anyone not
I think
see
you're
it?
on. I think you're on the website. You
Confused,
might want to
lost?
go to this
Maslov,
file.
tell me I'm going crazy.
Oh,
No, you're good.
You good there?
Yeah.
All right.
And then
Yeah, I can't find the
What should
folder.
I be in?
Can't find the folder.
Downloads, desktop?
Yeah, I can't find it either.
All right. So in your open up
so
your
you're
terminal.
probably a couple layers up. So if you
So
Pull up this PC.
yeah.
I'm all up in there.
Wow. So here, this is actually showing you your PC. So what you want to do? Let's go to C drive.
Oh, here.
Go to users.
Oh, here. Wait.
C drive
That's like the second last thing.
and users,
And then Samantha.
and then I'm assuming
And you just, so this is your user profile.
DJJ. It's right here.
See that works?
There we go.
So we did make a folder. And this kind of goes vice versa. So if you make a folder on your GUI, you should be able to traverse to it on your terminal with a CD. Right? Were you able to find it?
No. So there's no area.
So go to
Command line and then my
drive,
Finder. So it should be in desktop.
users,
It should be in desktop. Go back to your terminal and type in the pwd command. Let's see.
and you should find it.
It's not in desktop. See? It's
Okay.
users, user profile, and then workshop.
So do CD desktop or
No. So you already made the folder outside. So what you want to do is go back to your, how do you do the PC?
Does anyone have any other questions at this point?
How do you go to your home? Oh man. Oh, sorry.
that's all good.
How do I go back to my home folder on a Mac? I don't use the Mac, guys.
I use the Mac. Use the
Just
Windows.
Just see the.
It's okay if you want to.
No, as in on the Finder
I can
itself.
show 'em.
On the app. Because when you open it by default, what does it take you?
Oh, I just go like command I pop up.
Oh, that's an extra shortcut to learn.
Yeah.
So under your Macintosh HD, you should have your users, right?
See,
Let's do that. Users, Maslov, and then there's your folder. Right?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very important to, that pwd command tells you exactly where you are. So if it says desktop, then you made a folder on your desktop. If not, it's just on your user's profile.
So clear, just kind of bump them over now.
Yeah, so that's actually how it works. Like, a lot of these terminals will do that. There will be some terminals. In Unix, you can get different types of terminals, different fancy whistles. Some will actually just clear it out for you. In PowerShell, it'll just clear it out completely.
Oh, okay.
So it's a little bit different, but yeah, so you do have that history as well.
I didn't understand what bash is.
So Bash is a type of shell. So unlike in Windows, where you only have command prompt or PowerShell,
Script.
in the land of Unix, you can have different type of shells,
So where is
which have different capabilities. So Bash is the basic one, which is there's something like born again shell. There was like an initial shell before, and that's kind of got enhanced, and it has different version ones. So in fact, a Mac one is actually a variant of Bash. I think so. You do have Bash, but I think the newest one has like TCSH. There's like ZSH. There's different types of shells that have different features. So ZSH is one where it has advanced auto completion. So it can do like really fancy stuff. Some can do like color coded output as well. So they all have different types of features. And if you're, I've worked a lot with Linux. So Linux has a whole bunch of these things. So you can always like play around with different features, but it makes your life a little bit easier. So like if you ever, has anyone used Ubuntu here, Linux? Ubuntu terminal has color support by default, right? That's pretty nice. So like I think you can modify the default one in Mac too, but yeah, there are different types of shells you can get. I think that, but that's probably limited just to Unix. With Windows stuff, it's really tied to like the environment, so it's very hard to find variants. But Bash is the default one. So if you're making any scripts, you should probably make sure it runs in Bash.
I saw it.
And then they'll probably work in everything else.
Okay.
That's a good question. Bash. We good?
Next one? Yes. Okay. So create a file.
Yeah. So we'll create a file. You can
you
use
do this in PowerShell?
using PowerShell. Yes.
Okay.
So this is going to just create a file. There are commands that will let you write the content of the file directly in the terminal. But for now, let's just do this. Let's make sure it's there. So if you write one of these commands in the corresponding OS, I want you to go back to it from your Finder or your Windows Explorer. See if you can open it with like Notepad or like the Mac Notepad. TextPad, what is it called? Yeah,
Text edit.
TextPad?
Text edit.
Text edit.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Echo is just what I create.
So what Echo does is, in Windows that's a little hacky way of doing it. So what it does is it takes the empty string and pipes it out. That's actually one of a variant of pipe where it'll send the output of that to that file. So you'll have a file on your, wherever your folder is that says myscript.ps1, and it'll probably be empty. On the Windows, so on Mac, you have something called Touch that just creates it.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a gentle caress. If you're on a Mac or a Linux, you can also type in the command nano and then the file name, and that'll give you a terminal text editor as well. I wish I could show that, but I don't think we have that here. There are some similar things in Windows too, where you probably have to install third-party editions. But that just kind of goes to show that there are really advanced applications in terminal that you can use for like all sorts of stuff. So, but anyway, let's get back to this. So when you create the file, I want you to run ls again. Make sure your file is there. Run that pwd to make sure it's exactly where you want it to be, and check in the file explorer to make sure it's there. Yes?
Windows does not have a touch command.
Command line does not. I wouldn't be surprised if they added it in PowerShell. Your smile tells me you found touch in
Because
PowerShell.
I worked with Linux before, and
Okay.
I'm kind of weirded out that there wouldn't be a similar one in Windows.
What is Windows? I'm just kidding.
It says it doesn't recognize what I just typed in there.
Did anyone find any issues? I know you're having issues. Did anyone else? Everyone else able to do it with the task?
Right.
So you want to make sure the spacing is correct, right? The spacings matter a lot. So try to add a space after the echo, before the greater than.
Okay.
And a quick shortcut to retype the command is just the up arrow key. It'll kind of bring up the previous command you typed in. So just go ahead and press the up arrow on your keyboard.
The what?
The up arrow key, this one.
Okay.
There you go. So there's a command. So let's go back a little bit. Just go left and add spaces.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's a pretty nice shortcut.
Between
though.
echo.
Yeah, so after echo and after the double quotes and after that symbol as well.
How do you, in a Windows computer, how do you write out or go into an editor? You know?
And then hit enter.
Try nano.
Yeah, no.
So go ahead and press enter. Yeah, so you see no output. Now type in ls. Usually no output is good output. Usually. ls.
Okay, I remember that.
What it does.
So now see, now it's created the file. So if you go back to your here, there's the file you made. Pretty cool, huh?
Right.
Pretty cool.
Thank you.
So what you're doing is you're
So you said
creating
you've
a
used
file.
Linux before.
Yes.
What text
you were
editor
showing
do you
was the
use?
user echo.
We did not use
Oh, of
either
course.
them.
Yeah, so now I think it's probably requesting for you to add something into the file. But no worries if it did create it for you. So.
A lot of people here have Windows, right? Let's try the Windows one. I think this will work.
You just did it.
There's no nano, right?
Yeah.
I'll find out during the workshop. There is a way to do it in Windows as well. Oftentimes you'll have to install a separate utility, but I think PowerShell may have something. I just know that from experience that Mac and Linux has it. But anyways, all right, so we've created the file. We're in our workshop. So now we're going to go into the activity. In this activity, what would they be doing, Alex? Why don't you tell them?
In this activity, you will be creating a script that reads jokes out aloud on your computer. So very useful. But it's going to be a fun activity, and it'll teach you a few things about writing commands in script format.
Yeah, you can set it to run on startup. So when you start your computer on presentation day, it tells you a joke when your computer starts. You can make that up. And we'll use some of the commands. So let's make sure everyone has that link.
Yeah.
I get that.
Do they have them?
I don't think they have the link.
You would have a charging cord.
Sure.
For what computer?
What kind? Yeah.
It's an MSI.
DK.
You need to plug yours in? There you go. You use mine. Mine's full of charge.
Make it a public file? Yeah. And then let's just put it
How about this?
This is the same time.
Same thing.
the only tab. Have you done one before? Alright guys, one second, we'll get to the URL really quick.
Oh, I think if you go, yeah, I think I would Bitly open, or not in guest, but in another window, the window down the bottom.
Oh, you already have one closed?
Not or escape that, and then Bitly, the fifth tab, and then X on the right, and then create a new one.
Oh, thanks Mazda. Alright, there we go. Sweet. Can anyone see that? I will put this over here. There we go.
Now,
Is that
everybody see
an
that?
L or an I?
Jeez.
No. Try high. If that doesn't work, try out. Can anyone tell me? Can anyone tell me?
I think it might be now.
Mm,
Is it part
It's
of
an
the?
L.
guys,
Yeah, it's-
come on.
Is it part of the workshop?
There we go, that's an L. Oh wait, I just copied it.
how do you tell if it's an L?
You change the font.
So,
Oh.
I think it might be.
The Times New Roman. Classic. That's an L. This guy's
2S,
a 1.
2SO or 0?
Fonts are hard, guys.
2SO.
And the last one,
2SO.
Yeah.
And the last one is what?
0.
Okay.
Oh shit, am I not anonymous or is everyone anonymous?
Small L, guys. Sorry, my bad.
Oh no, big O, L,
Is anyone not done the L word?
F.
Everyone there? Small L.
Not yet. Almost J.
Does everyone have it pulled up? Here, watch it. Oh, you open this
Say
one?
0.
Yeah.
I just typed slow, that's all.
That's fine. So why don't you take that, copy that, and put it in a new tab.
L,
So you can do it in your budget.
0.
Boy, you
Yes.
fast than me.
It's cool.
2S.
There you go.
Thank you.
It's case sensitive though, guys.
Okay, so it's
sure it's good. Okay,
it's
try
got to
it.
be a lowercase L.
There we go. What was
Alright,
that?
everyone got it?
No, I got it. I just everything.
There you go.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Alright.
I think I
Let's
typed
see.
one or
We're
something.
there?
So, L.
You got it? Alright, that was good. Alright, so, yeah, this will kind of be an independent portion from this point on. If you guys have questions, let us know. But you're going to make that script, and it's going to teach you how to upload it to your GitHub account using Git, the command line tool. If anything's unclear, just let us know. Yeah, I want everyone's computer to tell me a joke before we leave. Out loud. It's going to be awesome.
But read it.
It'll say it out loud? Yeah.
Do anti-jokes count?
What's an anti-joke? A pun? Bad joke?
Like things that are really bad, like why did Billy fall off the swing?
$6 joke.
Oh,
He's on his way.
someone figured it out.
He had no arms
Oh.
or something like that.
Something really dark.
Yeah.
Part of this, it actually tells you there's an API that gives you a random joke. So it'll give you a joke. Some of them might be anti-jokes.
If you want to find your own API, it's fine. Take it a step further, but
Why is there so many Chuck Norris jokes on this?
good question.
Oh my god, they're all Chuck Norris.
They're not all Chuck Norris, but most of them are Chuck Norris. Is anyone
this
confused?
one-
Anyone lost? Anyone have any questions? Feel free to shout it out, guys.
You found one that wasn't Chuck Norris.
Yeah.
The Titanic didn't hit an iceberg. The ship was off course and ran into Chuck Norris while he was doing the...
Alright, well done. Well done. Let's hear some more.
Alright, use the
Not for me.
And we want to make it a script, guys. So that file you created on that that presentation earlier, we want to make sure that when I run that script, it tells me that joke out loud. For Windows, you can use something called PowerShell ISE, which will let you, it's kind of like an IDE where you can type in your commands and run it on, it's kind of like Eclipse, right?
If you're on a Mac, you just gotta put it in a file and double click that file.
And double click that file.
Chuck Norris can't retrieve anything from /dev/no.
Oh wait.
Nope. I hear more Chuck Norris jokes. Just keep a counter of how many Chuck Norris jokes that has. 20.
Is it?
20 or
Is it
20?
not working?
Is your volume like, is your computer muted?
No, I unmuted mine. Should we, like, you don't modify it at all? Okay.
Just copied and pasted it.
You
Yeah,
can.
this is probably with the Mac version.
So the Windows one, you can actually make it a
Use
little
the
bit
built-
neater.
Oh, that's why.
But you should be able to use
I
it
didn't
as
do
is.
the built-in storage.
Everyone's good? Confused? Questions? Lost?
I put this,
Hates the jokes?
do I put this in here, the PowerShell? This address in the PowerShell?
We'll open this file you made. So go back to your file explorer where you made the MyScript file,
Yeah,
right?
no,
Okay.
Let's go back to Windows Explorer there.
File.
Yeah, that one.
Saurabh. In
So-
Windows.
Right, so I open this.
Start command specifically.
So you pasted this part in, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
How did you do
And so you zip
So just
And I copied all of that and pasted it in. Is there a thing where I'm supposed to
in the file?
in the
I've done this in the current
Oh,
directory.
you type that in the command.
control center.
Okay.
So the link is the yellow
Is that?
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, I got it.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I should say, I mean, you did mention the speak joke and all that. I don't know, maybe ask Alex.
You want to try it
I
out?
don't need this computer.
Yeah, yeah,
Shut the
yeah.
fuck up.
You're more than welcome. The one computer just up there.
Okay, see if you can debug it. 1% of the
Is it a workshop?
Yeah. I'm on. Hey, yeah, how you good? We're done with this.
Contrary to popular belief,
I'm just
the
saying we're
Titanic
these
didn't
guys,
hit
so
an
we're
iceberg.
supposed to use the other.
The ship was off course and rammed into Chuck Norris while he was
You also want to
swimming
stop this
backstroke
anyway.
across the
It's fine,
Atlantic.
Joe, if you want to.
Are you going to the website?
Are we allowed to write our own jokes?
Okay, yeah, I don't know the next step. Hold on, let me try to follow the directions first.
Is there like a string we can enter in? Where it's like, here is my joke.
Okay,
So this
You need to go geekjokes.com. Use that over here.
let's go.
we just
Chuck Norris doesn't pair program.
Type that assembly name, system speech.
yes, but it's a matter of like making sure that it's in the file here. Do you understand what's going on there? No. Alright. That's the key. So you're essentially adding
It's not working.
the system speech
Oh, at least it came back.
functionality,
Is it like the
and then you're telling it to speak that joke. Now, in Mac it's a little bit easier because it said that the same joke, but in Windows it's a little bit more difficult.
or maybe
This is just a command that you can find on their system speech
maybe
sources.
we could put it
So you're essentially
into
getting the speech functionality. You're getting the speech synthesizer, and you're telling to speak the joke, and the joke is what you're getting from this API, and then the content of that API is set to this joke.
NKDI.
Does that make sense? It's, I think so. So we start here. wget.
Do you understand the commands?
Greater than.
Okay. So is anyone having a hard time understanding what the command is doing?
Whatever you want.
Okay. So in the example here, wget is making a call to the API. So, and in the Windows version, wget is making a call to the API. It's getting all of the information there, and then it's doing .content,
You got it?
and then which means that that gets the content from that API call. You're setting that then to a variable named joke.
Can't figure out what's
Yes. Because that's what it is.
Because that's what it is. So then the next line may look like a lot, but essentially it's getting the system speech functionality and then calling the speak function on that that Windows object. I don't know what, I think it's like the speech synthesizer there. And then you're saying .speak, and then so it's speaking aloud the joke. Now, if you look at the Mac version,
It's probably more easier to understand conceptually. It's a little bit easier on the Mac, but on Windows you have to import those libraries. But yeah, essentially what you're doing is writing a variable to get that joke, reading the content of it, and actually, can you go back to the document?
and then you say the joke.
So on that line 1, for those of us with Windows, I want you to type in that command, just the one that's in the parentheses. Tell me what you get, just the wget without the content.
Just the W, sorry.
You can do curl.
Yeah.
You're fancy.
Oh, can I
But
use
wget's good enough too.
It'll work on mine?
I think sure.
So you got a 200.
So if you do that,
And the content
you should see a whole bunch of stuff.
is Unix.
What that content allows us to do is filter it down.
It's just for
And actually, if you wanted to really take advantage of like the pipe and stuff I was mentioning, you can not save it to a variable and at the end add a pipe symbol to it, which is like the key above your enter key,
Just get
and
the
type in the rest of that command, and you should be able to just have it one-liner as well.
Speech.
So I know I'm just kind of looking at that stuff, so you might have to refer to your own document.
So that's what you're doing there is you're importing
Didn't work.
this
I think it's
speech
finished with
synthesizer.
Mac OS.
Oh, it doesn't have.
Saurabh
The say isn't
created
working.
this.
In,
Saurabh,
Yeah.
Yes.
do you want to explain what the second line is doing and how it's creating that speech synthesizer?
Oh yeah.
Sorry to call upon.
An object?
I'll send you. Or I'll put it up on.
Right, so if you were doing this kind of stuff in like Java or C#, you would import that library, right, that assembly, and then you create an instance of the symbols that is.
Yeah.
That's essentially what it's doing.
Now I have done this. I put this in PowerShell.
You can write full-on programs with this. And one of the questions that
I put that in PowerShell.
Yeah. Yeah. So no. So you copy this whole line.
Something like this.
You copy that in.
I copy this in here.
Yeah. Into the second. You go click enter.
I gotta press dot content.
Yeah, dot content. So what we're doing is we're getting everything from that API call and then getting the content. So you're gonna want to do
Do I need a space on that?
no. It's just you go back and then from there dot content.
And actually, you can break it apart. So in your script, you can copy that assembly first, create that instance, and your code will look a lot more like the Mac version.
How do you like your surface?
Okay.
I love
Have you done
that.
anything like Java programming?
And
Yeah, like I know like
then I press enter
Java,
Yeah. Then
and copy and paste that.
Yeah.
Well, that's the add type, so that assembly nature. So the import assembly is important, like the DLL.
Well, not included.
I've been listening.
So if you in your script, if you want to have that as the first
I've been learning to use I've been listening to it scared the crap out of me because it'll read like the Windows Start page, and I like flip my computer open and like that's the name, and I heard like this male voice talking, and I was by myself, and I was like, my apartment's like this big, I can see the front door.
So
from my
click
bathroom.
save on that.
I think it's a script file.
Actually, just
Or maybe you
Save as my script. Alright, that's good.
follow the guy.
Yeah, if you have Windows,
Save in my script
so
too.
the one you put into
We're gonna do my
file, so just the file that you
And then we're gonna do
Word
all
stuff,
files.
you did that?
So kind of carry.
So we basically just made a directory,
And then we're gonna do
and then
dot sh there. So put dot sh.
just
And then
I
save
put my
it.
users folder, so that it was just workshop, and then we created
That's right.
a and then just script file, and then you just put the
Okay,
first
so
one.
now you've got my script. Now go to that your folder where you have that file.
Command
Command prompt from.
Yes, one.
And then type in the name of your script.
And then you just
So do ls.
directory in.
45.
Write ls in there.
Do you have your script right?
Then we're
Enter.
gonna push it.
Because
Okay, now we've got
they want to identify the best of the best, you know?
Yeah,
so we've got my script.sh. So just type in mys
dedicated to this.
tab.
Practicing every day.
Okay, and then backspace 3 times because it chose the wrong one.
Just too much homework.
Then do sh.
I want to sign it because both are important. Both the and the design for it.
that I had to do my homework.
Cannot execute binary file.
Yeah, November 30. Yeah, you're in good shape.
Is it because I typed that in instead of pasting it?
Well, not really. I still have to like interview after the whole thing. So
Okay.
like as we're
Okay, I got this.
You over
I
there?
guess.
Ah, so you want to do this in PowerShell, remember?
The same.
I did this in PowerShell.
It's not working with the
So what's interesting here is that SH file, that's actually specific to Mac and Linux.
but
So in Windows, you want to have it a PS1. So go back to your file explorer. Actually, we'll do this.
print it.
Just type in a new command here. So we're going to do a command called move, which is going to move the file. And we're going to use it to rename
So
it.
just re-enter it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. So you can just start typing there. So type in MV,
The
MV
PowerShell.
space,
space
MY.
Yeah, I wish I didn't.
Now type in tab.
Type tab in or hit
And you
tab.
hit the tab key. And then, so it auto-completed your file for you. So that's nice.
For you.
So we'll do a space,
There it is.
and we'll do a period,
Yep.
Space and period.
slash, again, that one.
Slash.
Sorry, the other one.
Help.
The other
My
one?
code isn't working.
The other
It's
slash.
not
And what's that
reading
I
off
have
my
Is there
another
one right below the backspace?
right below? Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
And then type
It's
in
not reading it
my
off
script.
when I copy.
Wait, hold on. You do already have this
Okay.
SH file. Oh, sorry. That's interesting.
So,
So here you have a PowerShell script.
a really quick way to do
And
this is if you go to open like a text.
How many people are able to actually create their script? All right. Moving on to Git stuff. All right.
Okay,
Let's do it.
paste.
Easy money.
Okay. You see where joke is?
So we want to have this stuff here. So what we'll do
This is the easy way. You're going to want to do the hard way, but
Is-
here's the easy way. Go to the other
edit with this.
description.
We're going to put everything you did
Okay, then you're
here.
gonna
So
want to put
essentially
get
the
this
command,
whole line dot content
this is
where
fine,
joke is.
but we want to have it in the
Okay.
So that's what it's
Microsoft like
So you're gonna
terminal,
want
not the Linux
joke.
terminal. That's just a little hiccup. I think I could have made that clearer. So my apologies. We'll go back to your.
I probably still
And
wouldn't
put it
understand,
where?
but I will soon know.
Here, where joke
Oh,
is.
is there?
Okay.
Is there anything you're
replace
confused
joke
about?
Replace joke, yeah. So
On
like
this-
that.
No.
Instead of
I'm sitting here
assigning
trying to
joke.
learn this
Yeah,
stuff
so then
before when I
you just
learn
copy
what I
that
can
and
about
paste
it.
it
Like I
into your
learned about
command prompts
repositories and stuff here before I get in one of the
Oh,
classes.
I just
Ah,
realized
okay.
this is
Just do.
So essentially, what we needed to do was copy everything that was in the SH
And
file
then
into the
Control V.
PS1. So PS1 is the PowerShell, right? We're using PowerShell here,
Right.
so that's where it needs to be as. That's
So-
all it is.
So is that it?
Yeah. So let's try it.
It's fine, just click on it.
Ah, so there's an issue that says you're not allowed to run scripts on your system. Are you the admin on this computer? Is this your personal computer?
Yes, it is.
Does anyone else see that issue? Did you have that same one?
Jesus.
Yes, it is my computer.
I don't know.
So,
So what should I do?
So he just said that one of the ways around is if you go back to the file explorer.
Okay, so
Football history.
if you do the double, just do
Some of them
the.
are not funny, huh? So right click that one.
Yeah.
Hey, I didn't write the jokes.
Right,
So
yeah,
if you
right click.
just do wget
And then do run as
and
admin.
super
Run is that?
Can you copy that? Can
Who's that?
Wait a minute.
Can I put a string in here and it'll read
Control
it
V.
off?
Is there a shortcut to running as admin?
This and be like, uh-huh.
You just wanted to copy it
Wait,
as
no,
admin?
let me.
Okay.
How
So
could
that's
I
the
not-
so it's getting the
Because I didn't
entire
register as admin or
API
something?
endpoint.
Somewhere in there, it's the whole system
And
is
it's
blocking it
returning
from running
everything, and
scripts at all.
Content
Yeah, well, I got this point in from Best Buy,
Which is-
so.
for Chuck Norris NPR is 01.
We'll. Okay, hold on.
So is this a variable?
That is a variable.
Oh, okay.
So I have
Now-
another
so that's how you know
issue.
you're getting it. You're
That's
setting
okay.
to a variable.
So
But
for now,
now
what we
you
can
want
actually
to
just do
that variable.
is if
So
you open that
want to
file,
speak.
I want you to run these commands
This
one
is
by
just
one
a-
in the PowerShell.
The way they structure
That should kind of emulate what we're trying to do.
Java, and you want to import a bunch of libraries. That's what pretty much
So why don't you
you're
try
doing.
that? Try
And then
copying
you're
each of
calling
these
the
lines
function
into
speak
there.
on one of the
Okay.
So you can get it to actually do the thing and just put it in the script later.
Yeah, so it's making the calls to get it already for you.
Oh, okay.
But, well, what you want to do is you want to put all that in a file.
Okay.
So
Are you good,
that
man?
way,
Were you able to figure it out?
No, it's just running from there.
You want to
It's in the text file, right?
What's not over there?
so if you have a file, put it in a file, put those two lines right one before the other. So yeah, what you're gonna do is, oh yeah, you can play around with that too.
Sorry.
But you're gonna want to put it in a file. We went over the easy way. The hard way in the better way, honestly. Because if you want to replace something with joke in the future, technically, if you want to do flexible, then you could just put it in a file, put the joke first and first line, put the second command in the second line. So you're gonna want the joke in the first line and the PowerShell in the second line.
So the joke is just anything, or is it a certain piece of code? The joke.
So you just copy joke equals, and then you copy that into the text editor, and you copy the next line. What the whole point of this though is to show you what the capabilities are and what each of the lines can do separately. So the first line, we're making a call to the API, and we're getting the content from that. Second line, we're reading it aloud with this speech reader, and it's speaking out that variable. Now, the reason why we want to do it in this fashion of making it 2 lines is if we wanted to set joke go to something else, which is what you were trying to do a moment ago, where it wasn't the default joke from that site, you could. That's the benefit of having it in 2 lines like this where you have variables. So you save that as a new file. I believe it would be a .sh, so joke. And save that, and then double click that or run it.
So where would I find these?
Yeah, double click it.
CLS. Inner.
Does not look like that.
Is this spelling for all the?
Maybe I pasted something in. Oh, does it read spaces?
Yeah.
Why does it keep doing
I
that?
don't think it does.
I don't think it does.
That's fine.
So, would you have to include all of this in the if you wanted to make a joke yourself that it would read off, or should you make this?
You should make that a variable. So kind of what it was in the actual example. If you make it into a variable, then you can set it to whatever you want.
Alright, so just the notepad file itself, or what should I put?
Oh yeah, you control save it as any file name that you want, some type of script file.
Okay.
And then end it with .sh. Has anyone got this working in Windows?
With both missing and both parentheses and waiting for
Are people seeing issues on Windows side?
Yeah, he's not able to.
One issue.
You're also having.
Yes. But I think I know what the problem is. I just don't know how to fix it.
Oh, history error. What?
Yeah, so I think it's better not to select when you create the repo, not to initialize the README.
Okay, a lot of the stuff that you use, like React and Angular, actually generates some of these readmes for you. You can generate them as you do the GitHub stuff too. I mean, it doesn't matter. You kind of override it anyway after the custom stuff. But that's an interesting observation. I've never seen that before. History mismatch?
Yeah, I can show you because I was trying to push, but it says histories. Because I guess it already.
So did you copy from the?
Okay, that's interesting. Has anyone got into work on Windows at all?
Yeah.
How about Mac?
She got into work on Windows, but she replaced joke with the actual API call. So in order to get that worked, but now it's part of splitting that up into its own script. Is the next part. And he's also trying to do it, and it's closing out right away.
Yeah. So that's running in Git Bash. We don't want that to run in Git Bash. So right click that and we need to rename it to a PS1 extension. What you can do is go up to View at the top tab, and just do a show file extensions.
What was that?
File name extensions.
PS1.
Yeah, so that should be PS1.
My apologies. It's PS1. So you create a
Okay, a lot of people are seeing this command. Oh man. Okay.
So create a file. Open that up in Okay, so now you've got joke, but the next thing you want to do is click enter and then put the second line in there that uses the joke.
Is anyone able to run this just on the terminal and not using a script on Windows? No? Alright, we'll have to figure this out. We'll do it live. We'll figure it out live.
I put in 2 periods in web address and I can't get it out. The other period. That's what I think. That's what I think is wrong with this.
Okay, so just do Control C.
Every single meeting. How many do you
Control
have?
C.
So we're just gonna go up to where you have
You had a
zero.
gaming laptop last time.
Just get it.
I think this bar is
what we want.
Yeah, that's what.
Okay, then.
Okay, so now if you just do a dollar joke, let's try that.
A dollar joke.
Dollar joke.
Jokes for $1. Jokes for $1. Yeah.
Try.
To be quite honest, I'm very new to programming, and I don't know most of this or what's going on most of the time.
Okay.
I mean,
That's okay.
The reason for this
So there you go. So it looks like you got the joke.
Stuff like this.
Now we want to run the second thing to actually say
It isn't
that.
too bad. I think what I really like
Let's
noticed
try
is that
that.
you have to like really like type the commands like specifically.
So go back to the Google Doc and let's see if you can copy that.
Like,
Do the second command. Actually, you have it here.
Like, it'll change the color, and I'm like,
We have a joke, but I just wanted to say it out
yeah,
loud.
and I'm like, oh, boy.
Just do like this.
Or then I'm just gonna go into my computer screen that I have on the inside and be like, yes, I don't know what I did, but I did it.
Delete your whole like
Let's
story.
delete system 32. Remember that little thing?
I feel like I'm missing a lot.
I can't even spell.
That's okay.
Synthesize.
And what if that is actually like a real command?
Oh my god, I would cry.
I dare you to.
No.
No, I'm curious.
Let's see. I have to download all the important stuff on my laptop.
Are you still using one of these?
Yeah. I have my resume on it, and I updated my resume, so now I have to re-download it.
Donald.
Done. Yes. What is the extension on your file?
But
The extension
Yeah.
with the SH.
Yeah, do PS1.
I got it fixed. It was T periods and
I'm a computer science
the
minor.
address.
Okay.
It's a really weird.
So now I'm doing
It's like two
trying to get it to speak. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's cool though.
Okay.
Well, do you need me to do it for something else?
No, I was saying we need, if the file name is still
I'm good at
SH, we
learning
need it to
languages,
PS1.
and I don't like talking to people, so learning language
Yeah, I
will
had
allow me
that.
to speak.
Yeah.
it.
No, that's
Wait a
Oh, yeah,
minute.
you speak to a machine.
Yeah, it's the easiest.
Yes, ma'am.
You don't have to worry about his feelings when you walk out.
I know.
You're like, oh boy.
Man,
It'll,
now I
just
can't
it'll tell you directly what's
name
wrong.
the
I can just
PS1
like, fuck
file
this up.
name.
Time to fix it.
More direct than people
Save
You wanna,
Yes.
you wanna stay?
I was curious
Just
to
walk
what
out.
hold up.
Walk out when you're done. You can walk out with like the rest of everybody that
Well, I
costumes
told my friend I'd meet him at 6:30 for dinner, so I'm gonna have to
that PS1
skedaddle.
save
Yeah, they'll always be there.
replace it. Yes,
Probably try
Are you
and come
gonna
back
link
next
the
week.
already opened the notepad. Okay,
same documents last time? I was bookmarking.
so this is PS1.
I gotta go. It was nice meeting you all.
Alright, see ya.
Okay,
Did everybody move on?
Curious.
Let's finish that. We'll move on to the GitHub step.
copy.
Did you get it?
Paste. Okay, and enter.
I just opened my iPad, but if you have another text editor that you need to use,
Like it's not like a one-line thing on the audio.
it doesn't really matter what you're looking at then.
Except Chuck Norris.
That's it.
Chuck Norris. So the issue was, I think I made it a little bit complicated by just trying to make it into one line. But if you actually break down that Windows command, this is what it is, line by line. So if you're having problems, try breaking it apart like this. Let's see if that works. I'll put this in the Google Doc later. But if you look at the original doc, you can see that those are all part of the whole one-line command. And now it's a little bit more clear. So we're importing the speech libraries, we're getting the objects for the speak, and then we're just saying it out loud. So let's try that. No, you're okay. Thanks for stopping by.
Okay, that's done.
All right. Now how we looking? Now how we looking? And that's how we do debugging as well. You want to see debugging?
Yeah, 2 for 1.
2 for 1. Live. Do it live.
And men often go awry. Even the worst laid plans of Chuck Norris come off without a hitch.
Make sure we have, you can't see it here, but you can also make it so that it types it out.
Well, yeah, but you're usually
Fail to recommend Chuck Norris as a solution to most problems. Also, 80% of doctors die unexplained, needlessly brutal deaths.
Okay.
Yeah. Now I'm just being me.
Yeah, does that make sense to everybody? How this PowerShell script is working?
Okay, and then just and why.
Alright, cool. So, how many of us got to the Git step? Anyone got into Git?
I'm like, yeah, I'm the Git stuff.
It's tough?
No.
Are you stuck on something?
No, I'm saying I'm on the Git stuff.
Okay, alright. Wait, so it's tough?
No.
No problem. Pretty easy.
Chuck Norris starts every day with a protein shake made from fresh chickens for breakfast.
Were you able to pass on like this? No, you're in.
Colombian cocaine.
We didn't do
Metals
it.
and venom. He injects it directly into his veins.
So the reason why I was giving the same joke over and over again is because you remember there's a
Yeah.
You're right.
No.
What's going on? You got it?
No. I tried to copy and paste that, but it had face on it. So I hit it again and it erased the joke part, right?
Oh no. Can you Control Z? Undo
Control Z.
it? That'll undo what you just left in.
Thank you, Jesus.
What are we
Okay.
up to over here?
Uh-oh.
I got the Git.
You have a Git one?
Yeah.
And you got
Oh,
one?
no, that one. We don't want to. You can actually go to delete that one.
Delete that one.
But that's okay. So yeah, it looks like you got that.
Huh?
Let's see if does this work. Have we tried running it yet?
What?
Let's try to run this.
No, I can't get this to. I cleared it first. Cleared it.
Okay.
Where's it at? Where's it at? Where is it at? Nope, that's not what I want. Okay, that's what I
Remove
want.
that. It's such a useful feature.
Okay, so I wanted to put that in here. So,
Never even know about it.
get this here.
Initial frames.
Man, I got too many things open.
That's okay. Yeah. That one.
Okay, so what I did was I did this.
You can do Control A. It'll select everything.
Control A.
You got it?
Control A. I'm gonna have to
that you?
put this stuff
What?
down. Control A.
I did not check if these are safe.
What's like that?
And now to the PowerShell.
Paste it there.
And Control P.
V. That's not it.
V. Control V.
Yeah, you would think it'd be P, right? Because paste is P.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I don't have it.
So now you have to run it.
And all
Here.
15 were okay with
Run it?
Second
Yeah. So go ahead and click on this little please symbol.
15 straight were like solid gold. And we get
All
here.
right. So it says it's going to be saved.
Yeah,
Okay,
some-
that's
some
fine.
oddities.
Save it.
Okay.
Doctors are.
So you still have the same problem where it says
Yeah, the one, like they die like terribly, terrible deaths.
80% of doctors die. I know so much
Yeah,
stuff to his computer. I can't tell what I've done, but I'm gonna find out.
No, I think it's by default. I don't think it's something you did. It's just probably a security feature that like HP added. So you can't just run scripts because we want to run scripts. So we're going to
So I
do
did
this
wanna leave some
thing,
time
execution.
for you guys if you
You
did
probably
have
don't need to worry
questions
about this
other
stuff though.
than
This is just we just run it once, just so you
About-
can. It allows you to run stuff.
you know,
Does that make
Thank
sense?
jobs or what you guys are going through at this point. Do you have any questions about anything related to computer science?
I actually feel like cyber's like I'm actually wanted to go over more like is there like a way you can defend networks using PowerShell? Because like they were talking a lot about it.
You can do pretty much anything with PowerShell. Well, I mean, the thing is, it's great for automation. So if you create a program that does something,
Yeah.
then you can automate that and then run it with a command line.
So you can have like run something like at like 6 o'clock every day. Say.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
So it's very useful when you want to have something automatically built.
So it looks like you're having the
something
same problem
that
he
Saurabh
did. I think we need to
brought
break it
earlier
up.
was Jenkins. Now, I never heard of Jenkins before I got out of college, so I'm not surprised you guys haven't heard it. But
So what we're
essentially
gonna
it's a
have to do is we're
pipeline,
gonna have to break up this
which means
command. I think
that,
there's an issue with like the syntax.
When something
Essentially, what we're gonna
hits
do is
that,
take this like
it's
complicated
an
thing
it's
and put it on its own line.
trigger.
That's all we're
When
doing.
when it's
So we're
triggered,
gonna import the
goes
speech
through
thing. It's gonna
several
allow us to write programs that say
before
stuff,
it does something else.
and we are going to make
So in a lot of use cases,
an instance of the speaker.
like a
So
pipeline
we'll
is
make the
run
speaker
when you
thing,
commit your code. So what
which
you
will
do is
initialize
GitHub,
everything we
you
need
commit
to
your code,
actually
and before it can get into
do
the
that.
repository,
And so
it has
next
to
we have
pass
our
through several
joke.
steps. That might be
And what
unit
we want
tests,
the
that
speaker
might
to
be
do
linting to check to see
is
if your code is, like, good
speaker.speak.
quality. But
The
it
joke.
will run through all these
Follow me so far?
pipelines. Now,
yeah.
a lot of times,
So is that
like,
the-
pretty much all the time
the
for these
money
pipelines, you have to
symbol?
do with
Dot
commands.
speak. The money symbol
So
just means the
you
variable.
do-
So we have a
okay.
joke here. We want to pass it
You
on
want
to
to
the
install a
speaker.
bunch of node modules. So
Let's
that
see
way
if
you
this
run
works.
your project, you do npm install, and then you might do run tests, and then the next command might be
The Manhattan
run
Project
event
was not
tool,
intended
and
to
then
create
deploy
nuclear
your code,
weapons.
and then
It was
to
meant
see
to
if it got
recreate the
deployed,
destructive
and if it
power in a
fails
Chuck
in there,
Norris
it fails it.
roundhouse kick.
But you want this
They
to
didn't
happen
even come close.
continuously on a regular basis.
I wonder who even
So
made this, but
that's what this is really good.
someone made it.
You want to
So
use it. You could do that as well.
So,
If you wanted
so
to
I'm gonna
check
add
on,
one more thing here.
see how-
It's gonna tell you what the joke it's gonna say is, so you'll be able to read it as it says it out loud.
For Chuck Norris, NP hard equals
And you could do that on a
one.
dot every minute. You could do it every second. But it's really good for automation. Yeah, it's a long-winded way of saying yes.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
How would you schedule scripts to run?
So you probably need a different tool for that. So Windows has something called task schedule, which is probably what you use. So you schedule it to run at like 6 a.m. or something. I think Mac has something similar as well. And then the enterprise system, obviously, with like some third-party editor.
So it's kind of like cron.
Yeah, that's what you're using Unix. Nice. Bonus points.
I'm just curious because I use that on Linux all the time.
Did you have internships like your junior and sophomore year?
I started having internships I think it was my junior year. Yeah, I started off, so I did it over the summertime, and then I did over the wintertime for
A winter break?
Yeah, winter break.
Okay.
It was one of the internships lasted more than just the summer. So I went for the summer, and then I went for the winter for back to the same internship. And the next one after that, I went to a different place. It's good to have many internships, especially if they're from different places, if you can. Just because that way you get a wealth of knowledge in different parts of the field. So I would highly suggest it. Yeah, and it beefs up your resume big time. Yeah, that's right.
Is there a website for all these commands?
Commands?
There's a lot of commands, so it depends on what you want to do. I just will better off just finding whatever use case problem you're trying to solve and trying to build from there.
Okay.
So, what would be a good use case for it?
So Stack Overflow, you can find.
Yeah. Oftentimes, when trying to figure out what arguments and flags to use, but it just depends on the problem, right? So let's say, so I'm currently a graduate student at UMBC, and my professor has a website where she puts up all the homework. So I could write a script, but she doesn't always like to email people when she puts them up. Oh, that kind of sneaky. So you could write a script that every day looks to see if there's a new table on that page, see if there's a new homework entry, a new deadline, or anything like that. So that'd be a nice use case for it. So how would I do that, right? Well, we saw that wget thing. The wget's going to get any kind of research from the internet. I run it on that page. It gives me all the text on that page, and I can scan for it. So if the next homework's homework 4, you'll be like, do you find homework 4 on this page? You use that, but how do I find something in a string? Like, so if you use Java, you have something called like find string or something like that. How to do that in Bash? So you just look up how to do that. Turns out there's something called find str in Windows or grep in Unix. Now you can do a text search on a thing. And so with like these kind of little things, so earlier as I mentioned, Unix has this philosophy of do one thing well. So when you combine these different technologies, you can easily create a small script that kind of does something you're trying to do. If you're thinking about a problem, but it's too big, that's when you probably need to use a full-featured language like Java, maybe Python if it's not too complicated. But it's very important to make that distinction, to identify when it's a small enough case you can wrap in a script, or if you want to do something more hardcore like classes and object orientation in the assembly if you're interested.
like some.
I've heard of it. I don't like it. We take 290 and see some of that, right?
Yeah, I'm learning it right now.
It's fun, yeah.
Blast, I'm sure.
The light.
How are you guys doing? You guys still following this stuff? Who's on GitHub? Who has a repo on GitHub? Is your script on GitHub? Can I pull it up?
No,
I can't pull it up?
I wouldn't. I spelled something wrong in my comments, so let's
That's
not.
okay. What's your username? Do you mind?
What am I? I'm Peazalep1. PZALEP1.
Look at that. Workshop. PowerShell. Nice. Awesome. And you did it all through the command line? Was the Git command there?
That all works.
Excellent. Cool. All right. Has anyone else able to create their stuff? Any questions? Everything's clear? Is it less intimidating now? A little bit.
Any other? Yeah.
So how often do you use command line in your jobs and internships?
I use it every day.
Every day?
No joke. I use it today. I will use it tomorrow, and I will use it the next day. And I know that as a fact without even knowing what's coming, because I do a lot of front-end development, and you have to run this command called npm install, and another command that builds your code, and another command that serves up your code to run it on a local server. And I've got to run that several times a day, many times a day, whenever I update my code. So these commands, I mean, you're going to be, especially like cd, ls, make directory, you're going to be using those all the time. So,
yep.
How do multiple branches work?
So we didn't get into branches, but we
did not get into.
Okay, so branches are, so think about it as a tree. You got this master branch that's going up the middle, and that's the one that's the source of truth. So anytime that you want the current code base, you're going to want to pull from the master branch. If you want to start working on your own set of code based on the code from the master branch, you're going to want to branch off of that branch, and you might call that, whatever your new functionality is, and you name that branch your own. Once you're done with your code there, you merge that branch back in to the master branch, and then your code is now part of that master again. Now, there are instances where you have a bunch of branches coming off, and a bunch of people are working on different functionality, and that's when you get into the issues where I talked about earlier with merging. Sometimes someone might merge their branch in before you can merge yours in, and then you'll have to take a look at the differences there and check to see what can go in. You're looking at an example here. Oh, great! Yeah, this is my website. Codebyalex.com. But yeah, so this is a really simple example, but this is my own branch, and I push it to master. I'm the only one working on this. I really should have separate branches, just because it's good practice. But if you look at like the Angular project, that would be a good one, or a React project, or any of Kubernetes. And then you look at Insights.
Use
Too many forks to display.
Kubernetes. I don't personally, but I think it's a neat tool that has a lot of great use cases.
Not too many forks to display a graph.
But yeah, so that's branching. You want to create your own piece of functionality, make a branch, because you don't want to interfere with the master branch, and you don't want to push code into master branch by accident and then ruin everyone's day at like 9:00 p.m. or midnight, because then they found out that your code has gone into production and it's wrong. that would be bad news bears.
The thing with managing multiple branches, though, so Git is actually a little bit dangerous. Unless you do a little bit too much, you can do a lot of damage if you're not careful what you're doing. So managing multiple branches, it's more of an art. So you want to make sure your developers are on the same page about what your branching strategy is. How do you deploy stuff? Do you have different environments? Like, do you have a dev and a production? Or do you have a master and a feature branch? There are different branching strategies. And once your developers are on the same page, sometimes it's easier to just pair programs, sit down and make sure your branching stuff is good. Make sure you fix your merge conflicts. Someone had a question about merges earlier. But it all comes down to make sure you have a good strategy and making sure that you handle your merges well. Tools that help with this are CI tools. So one of the things we talked about last time was CI tools, so stuff that continuous integration does it for you. So it automatically builds when you check in stuff. And these are tools that allow you to make sure that works nicely. Well, that's an interesting one. So someone was working on Google Chrome Labs. It looks like in that second point, they started working on P01, didn't quite finish it. Someone started working on this stuff. Oftentimes it'll kind of go back into the master and just kind of disappear from the graph. But it gets a little bit tricky. So for the stuff that if I remember doing stuff here, usually you're just working on one project by yourself, so you won't see much of this. But as you go out and work in the industry where they do your source control, things get a little messy, and that's just over time something you learn to kind of deal with. Yes.
Do you need to request permission to merge with the master, or can you?
Yes. So there's a concept of a pull request.
Ooh.
That actually that's I think applies to forks, right? For branches, Alex, do you need permission like pull requests, or is that just for forks?
No, branches. Well, depending on
how you set it up,
who you work for, how your organization or your team manages the code. For instance, my team, we do it per branch, so you make a branch, make a pull request into the code, which usually allows other people, it gives an opportunity for other people to check to see if your code is worthy of going into the code base. That's when, like I was talking about earlier, if it does go through and it kicks off a build, and then it goes through a bunch of steps to make sure that your code quality is A-OK and that your unit tests pass, and then it will go into the master branch.
That's also an opportunity for your team to do a code review, right?
Yeah.
So make sure your stuff is looking good.
Yeah.
Provide comments, and you can update your code and make sure everyone's on the same page. So stuff that goes to master, it's production. Yeah, you guys have any other questions? About
This
that?
doesn't upload automatically when you hit upload code.
Which one? GitHub?
Okay, so I press upload files, go through the directions.
Okay.
So I don't see no verification because it said verified. And
well, so you can
it
do
said
it
drag files here to add them to your repository. So what do I just press this?
Yeah, or you can drag them here. So what you can do is go back here.
Go back here.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Here.
Right.
And what we'll do,
Oh, did you do the internship?
you can just take this stuff here and then drag it.
Could have.
Okay.
So you can upload this either through command line stuff as in the workshop, or just put it in here directly.
Go for it. I mean,
It
it's
actually shows you the stuff
easy,
here.
of course, to get out of the way.
We'll cancel this. It shows you here's your script. So you can add a commit message. So you can just say, add in my file.
If you have an internship lined up.
Okay.
So this is the way of putting it up remotely on GitHub.
For credits, knock them out.
Or do like an Android class.
One or the other.
Yeah.
Depends if you want to do Android. And now there's React and React Native. Has anyone heard of React or React Native? So, React is a JavaScript framework, very similar, in the same way that Angular is a JavaScript framework, Vue is a JavaScript framework. They allow you to write code in a way that's organized, and a lot of it's pre-built for you, which is kind of nice, like structure. Yeah, sure thing. React Native is a tool that allows you to build iOS and Android native apps with one code base. So you can create a web application with React, and then also create an iOS app and Android app with one code base, which is pretty cool if you think, especially if you need a bunch of different devices that you're pointing towards. So it's really good for startups too.
It generates a native code for it.
Yeah.
So a lot of pros and cons there, actually.
There are.
But it's interesting.
Bed
in like React-like syntax.
I said Bed Bath Beyond. I mean, Airbnb. Airbnb recently went off of React Native because they found that it was too much of a hassle to update the code that made it. It was like a tweak for iOS and a tweak for Android, especially with their large code base. There's too much work to do that than to just hire iOS and Android developers. So it depends on the situation that you're in.
A lot of startups like it because it's quick to move towards different devices, but yeah, it has its pros and cons. So.
Yeah, I'm interested. What are you guys kind of interested in going after you graduate? You know, be developers, administrators. You know, I'm very curious. Have you guys thought about that at all? Or you're not sure?
What do you think? You're nodding your head.
Development, application development.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Anyone else? What are you guys?
I'm more computer security oriented.
Security oriented?
I have fun doing scripting.
Yeah, you're gonna do a lot of that, I think. Very nice.
I kind of think to the software engineering path. I was like my major is really much the part.
For software engineering,
Yeah, I mean like is IT like could go to that position?
If you take the software engineering path, can you go to an IT role?
No, I mean like I am like IT path. Like could I go in the software engineering?
So you're saying you're on the IT track?
Yeah.
And you're asking, can you be a developer?
Yeah.